You know the story of Ophelia, right? From Hamlet, the beautiful, tragic girl, totally crushed by grief who goes mad and drowns in a river. It's one of the most famous, most heartbreaking stories in all of literature.
But what if we've had it wrong this whole time? What if that entire story is, well, a cover-up? What if her weakness was a disguise, her madness was a weapon, and her death, what if her death was actually a brilliant, perfectly planned escape? Yeah, let's dig into that because this is a wild ride.
You see, when it comes to Ophelia, there are really two different stories. There's the official version, the one the court of Elsinore wanted everyone to hear, and then there's the one she secretly wrote down herself, a story of survival in a place that was designed to silence her.
And let's just look at the difference here. The court's story needed a fragile, heartbroken victim, a girl completely overwhelmed by things she couldn't handle. But her own secret record, it shows someone else entirely, an incredibly observant and strategic woman who is an active agent of truth. Her madness wasn't a breakdown, it was a performance. And that drowning wasn't an act of despair, it was the final, critical step in her escape plan.
So, you're probably wondering, how on earth did she pull this off? Well, it all started way before the chaos of the play. It started with one simple, deadly lesson she had to learn as a woman in Elsinore: how to sound harmless. She wrote this about her own father, and wow. It shows just how early she understood the game. She realized all the rules and restrictions placed on her weren't actually there to keep her safe. No, they were there to protect the powerful men of the court from her intelligence, her observations, from the fact that she was paying attention.
I mean, just try to imagine living like this. You have to be small on purpose. You're taught to speak in half sentences because being certain about something is an accusation. Silence is your best quality. In a world with rules like these, speaking the truth out loud is literally impossible. She knew she had to find another way, a secret way, to keep a record of what was really happening.
And this was her genius solution, the herbarium. To everyone else, this was just a cute, harmless hobby for a young lady, a little book of pressed flowers. How sweet. But for Ophelia, this book was her first weapon. It was a secret archive where she could press not just flowers, but evidence, memories, and all the truths she was forbidden to speak.
But it gets even better. She didn't just press flowers for memories. She turned this harmless hobby into an incredibly sophisticated intelligence system. She literally created a secret language that she could use right out in the open.
The absolute brilliance of her plan was that she used the court's own prejudices as her shield. They looked down on feminine things. They saw flowers as nothing more than pretty decorations. And that contempt, that became her perfect camouflage. They saw a silly girl with a silly hobby, and all the while, she was building a coded record of their crimes right under their noses.
And here's a peek at how it worked. Every single flower had two meanings, the public one and her secret one. So when she handled rosemary, everyone else saw a cooking herb. For her, it was a coded message, remembrance of evidence. Violets weren't just flowers, they meant faithfulness to the truth. Later, when she famously gives King Claudius fennel and columbine, she's not just handing him plants. She is publicly accusing him of flattery, deceit, and betrayal in a language only she can understand. It's incredible.
Okay, so then her father is murdered by Hamlet. This is the moment the court expects her to just completely shatter. And she does give them a breakdown, but it's on her terms. This is where she seizes control of the whole story by giving them the exact performance they're expecting to see.
She had this profound realization. In a court that punishes a woman for being smart and certain, madness is the perfect loophole. Nobody punishes a mad woman. They just pity her, they dismiss her words as nonsense. So she decides to speak that language fluently, to wrap the truth in a cloak of insanity so no one will recognize it.
Her performance was just a masterclass in strategy. First, she leaned into the role of the mad girl that everyone was waiting for. Then, she started embedding her testimony, real facts about the corrupt court, about her father's death, into these innocent-sounding songs and rhymes. She handed out her coded flower messages directly to her targets. And, crucially, she used their pity as a shield. Everyone felt so sorry for the poor mad Ophelia that she could move around the court completely unseen, smuggling out pieces of her archive.
And all of this leads to her final, most audacious act of all, the moment that would redefine her entire story. Not as a tragedy, but as the final move to protect everything she had worked for. Because her drowning was a lie. It was a meticulously staged escape. Here's how it went down.
First, the diversion. She sings by the river, making sure her attendants are watching her every move. Then, the accident. She intentionally lets herself slip into the water. But she'd already studied the currents. She used them to float downriver to a hidden spot, away from anyone watching. And finally, the extraction. She wasn't alone. She had a network. A gardener was waiting with a disguise and supplies for her to start a new life.
So why fake her own death? It's simple, really. As long as Ophelia was alive in Elsinore, she was a pawn. Her grief, her madness, it could all be used against other people. But a dead girl? A dead girl's story is over. A dead girl can't be controlled. The second they thought she was gone, they stopped looking for her. They stopped trying to manipulate her story. It was the only way to truly be free and to make sure her archive, the real truth, would survive.
Elsinore wanted her to be a silent, tragic footnote in a story told by men, but instead, she outplayed every single one of them. She became the one thing they were most afraid of, a narrator they could not control.
So, the next time you hear the story of Ophelia, don't picture that poor, fragile girl floating in the water. Picture the brilliant strategist who staged that scene to save herself and her evidence. The court needed a drowned girl for their story to work, but what the world actually got was a witness. Which really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other stories from history have been told by the wrong narrator?